welcome to PolyInnovator. Today I'm talking with DaleObrochta, the magical balloon dude and content creator, about various aspects of learning, polymathy, and even new camera technology. This is the full interview with only minor editing so that you get the complete experience here on PolyInnovator. Stay tuned.
Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator.
Talking about this, we're talking about virtual programs.
Right.
The amount of learning that is going on right now is astronomical.
Oh yeah.
There are so many people learning things that they never thought they'd have to learn. For myself, I'm learning about 6 different DSL cameras
Oh yeah.
that I have no purpose to ever know about, but I'm learning about DSL. And then I'm sitting there, well, why am I spending, an hour reading about DSLs when I have a webcam that works perfectly fine?
Yeah.
And then, it's like, okay, which different software works better? Is OBS better than vMix, or is that better than OBS Stream Studio? So you're constantly reading and you're educating yourself. And then you're scratching your head going, man, what kind of PC? And next thing you know, you're learning about motherboards, you're learning about memory. And then you're realizing that, well, if I'm streaming, it's totally different than what the gamers need. And
Yeah.
if it wasn't for Google, I mean,
Right.
we'd be lost.
Or
the internet. Let's not just say Google, the internet, because
internet in general. I was actually telling someone this. If we had the quarantine during some other period where we didn't have the internet, I don't know if I would have made it through it.
Well, as a kid, we found ways, but each generation it's different. My kids find that their communication is putting the headsets on and gaming with their friends.
Right. Yeah. I've had a lot of things like that.
Yeah, and if they can't hear it, it's really interesting because what they do is they'll go on Instagram or Snapchat, or it's Instagram that they use, and they will actually turn the audio on and then talk to each other that way.
Right.
While still playing the game.
Yeah. Just to make sure they have that connection, so to speak. And it's kind of interesting how ingenuity comes into play there too, because they have that just natural, like, oh, if this doesn't work, I'll try this app or like something like that.
Yeah, and it's, I have to ask my son because my son's 10 years old, and I'm like, all right, I spent, again, an evening they go to bed, I'm up at, from 10:30 till almost midnight, I'm up trying to screw around with stuff, and I'm like, I'm tired of looking at my phone, watching YouTube. I know I could stream right to my TV.
Right.
So I'm sitting there going, I've seen my kid do it. He went boom. And I saw him on YouTube channels learning, hit the cast button. I can't find the cast button.
It's pretty hidden sometimes too, depending on what kind of phone you have.
Oh, well, the funny part was I looked at my son and went, wait. And this was the next morning. I'm looking at him going, dude, tell me how to get it on here. And he goes, well, you just hit the cast button. I went, the cast button was not there. I swear.
Yeah.
For an hour and a half, I looked for it.
It's always when someone else comes in.
Well, he looks at me. He goes, did you have the Xbox on? No. Why do I have to have? Oh, he goes, oh, you're casting through the Xbox. You go through the Xbox.
It's crazy.
Never knew that.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and because my TV does smart TV, but it's not smart enough to do the cast.
Right.
But for the cast to work, I actually go through my Xbox to cast.
Well, and you're talking about learning all these different softwares. I've been going through just terrible cycles of tech problems where my audio was clipping and I couldn't figure out why, or the video would just be fading because I'm using a webcam like you were talking about earlier.
Right.
And just constant, like, going down Google rabbit holes or YouTube rabbit holes and just trying to figure out what's going on or trying out different software.
And this is the learning that we were talking about. It's learning that you don't get in school. Unless you go to TV school, and then they teach you about how to use these high production cameras.
Right.
And they don't tell you about the cabling or anything else that goes to it. And what happens is most of these kids come out of the world and they've done 2 things. Either one, they've created their own production studio and they have an idea of what they're doing. Or 2, they're actually just walking in and going, oh, yeah, this is kind of the mixer we had at work. This is what we had at school. This is how it works. But if you bring them into a different environment, they're like, oh, I have no idea.
Keep them the right kind of frame of mind. They just teach you like, hey, work with this software and this tool. That's it, basically.
Yeah. And that's the sad part, because it's not a sad part. It's just their background on learning. They haven't had in some cases 20 years, 30 years of working in the field and seeing, oh, this is perfect example. I had a friend who worked for a radio station, and he did everything the way it was done. It was one of these disc jockeys at night with the techno beat, the electro beat, whatever they used to call that.
EDM or something like that. Right.
Yeah, and what they would have to do was he would have to do 4 hours worth of music blocks. He
Right.
would start at 8 and go till like 2 in the morning, and he would take the tape and he would cut the tape and splice in the songs.
That's cool.
And that's the way they used to do it. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, that's tedious. He's like, nah, you learn to hold a razor blade in your mouth and you just cut. You listen a little more, you cut, you tape, you cut, you tape, and that's the way they built stuff.
Right.
And he came to me, he's like, I found this software program called Cakewalk. It is so cool. It allows you to digitally edit video, or
Huh.
excuse me, audio, which is almost everything we do nowadays. We see
Yeah.
the stream, we could edit it, cut it, move things around. And at the time I went to do that, and we found out that Windows only allowed up to a 40 meg hard drive at a
Oh
time.
wow. That's some like that's that 1990s.
Yes, actually, it was mid '80s that we were
Oh
doing
wow.
this. And
Well,
the weird part was we had to do a lot of research. This is pre-internet now, to find out what the capacity of Windows was. And we started realizing that yes, Windows, they basically sold, Western Digital sold hard drives that were 120 meg, but you had to break them into these 40 meg partitions.
oh wow.
Now my friend was sitting there going bonkers because 40 minutes worth of music, well, actually it was 10 minutes worth of music, was 10 meg. So he could only get 40 minutes worth of music.
Per hard drive too. And that's a lot of hard drives then.
Yeah, and he was like, there's no way I could string this many. So the editing came down to I need to snippet maybe 12 songs in a 3-minute bite segment.
Hmm.
And we can't do that nowadays. I mean, we do this editing streaming here, and what's 53 meg? That's
Right.
nothing. That's a couple minute file.
Oh yeah, we've probably gotten at least 10 times that in this conversation alone.
Yeah. So with that being said, it's just crazy to think that, where we're at now, we just hop out on the internet and we learn quickly what we need to do and we put it in a play. But back then, a lot of it was you bought the stuff, you found out it didn't work, then you tried to cannibalize it to figure out how it would work. And
Divert in a way.
yeah, and there was more time spent back then reading to figure something out than flipping on YouTube and turning it,
Right. And just
you
trying to
know.
figure it out then. Well, and just kind of back to that Windows limitation, I remember a few years back having a 2 terabyte hard drive. And that, I guess, for at least Windows at the time or the motherboard at the time, that was kind of the limit. You could do past that, but you had to go in and set specific settings in the BIOS and actually have to go deep
Right.
down in there to tweak it well enough. But 2 terabytes was the limit. And I'm just thinking of the parallels of that 40 megabyte.
Oh yeah, I when I first started out on computers, 10 meg hard drive was like, oh my gosh, what do you do with all this space? I have these floppy disks. And nowadays, you're walking around with these little, where's a jump drive? You know, you get a jump drive and it's got 16 meg on it.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just,
I've seen jump drives with a terabyte on it.
man, that's
Insane.
enough to carry video, but it's a streaming. When you really put it down, that's almost somebody's knowledge will probably just fit on a jump drive of everything that they actually know.
Right.
But you probably have at least 2 jump drives of everything they've forgotten
True.
in that same time period.
Well, and it's interesting too, like how I wish we could just download information quicker than what just like looking at Google. Just literally plug in your brain to a USB port and call it a day. But
Well, what you want to be is a cockroach.
cockroach,
Cockroaches are born knowing everything that their ancestors have basically learned. That's why they're so hard to kill.
right?
They come up with, right when they're born, they know everything that their parents know.
Well, I think we're kind of segueing into the idea of what we were talking about on Matchmaker, where at FM, where we were talking about polymath versus just specialist, and kind of either being a master of one or a jack of all trades. And that's
Yeah,
always,
the master, I always say that, I'm a master of one craft, and that's balloon entertainment, instead of being a jack of all trades, which is an entertainer that can, do balloons, magic, juggling, fire eating, stilt walking,
hmm
face paint, all that crazy stuff. Because what happens is, to actually become a professional at anything, you have to narrow down your knowledge.
hmm
And even though you're narrowing down your knowledge, there's so much still more to learn.
always.
So it's kind of an infinite. You're constantly going like this, but it's an infinite path that
Yeah.
you will never come together.
And I think too, the way I see mastery is that you could never 100% master something, I don't think, because we learn so much over by the time you actually become a master at it. Some of the things you might have learned actually might have been replaced with newer studies or something like that, especially depending on your field. And then just
Yeah.
newer techniques, maybe some new air for the balloons might disrupt your whole world. I don't know how that would be, but just an
Well,
advantage.
I give you a perfect example. Helium. Probably when you grew up as a kid, helium was all over the place. When I was the thing, it was helium was yeah. You sucked on it, and you changed your voice.
Makes sense.
You let it go in the air. It didn't matter. Helium was just all over.
hmm Now,
Uh,
so
now now helium is basically it's a natural resource. It's a depleting resource, and there's only so much of it. And
right.
what's happened in the balloon industry, we used to go in the 2000 and the late 1980s, or excuse me, 90s. We had every wedding had helium balloons.
hmm
Around 2010, 12, somewhere around there, the helium shortage came in, and we seen what was typically a $35 helium tank go up to $135.
Right.
So your three little balloons that you had on your table went from $3 a balloon to $9 a balloon. And
Oh,
that's hard to justify when people go, it's just a balloon with some
yeah.
string and the helium. It was the helium costs that you're really paying for.
Right.
So now in our industry, the balloon industry, we have what we call, and it's kind of funny depending on how you want to look at the term, organic balloon decor, which means it's air filled.
Ah, okay.
So these are decor now that is just, instead of having the balloons up in the air, you could reverse the process. You could use air and hang them from the ceiling, or use a pedestal to have them elevated.
Popped up, yeah.
But now here's where you get the people who get technical with the word organic and actually say, well, organic, that's not real, because you're using a rubber plant, which is organic. A balloon, a
Right.
latex balloon, is natural, but the products you use to hold it is no longer organic.
Mhm.
So you get into these symmetries where people are saying, well, you're really not organic, because when you think of organic, you think of grown without any herbs, or
Yeah,
excuse me, without any um, chemicals. It's
right.
just a natural product. But when it comes to balloon decor, you still have to rig things together, and you got wiring, you got plastic in there. And so it's
Mhm.
not 100% organic, even though that's the term they use nowadays.
Much more than what it used to be, at least, too. And so, especially in your
Yeah,
world, that's just how you define it. And yeah.
it is. And well, we also have to think about it. We have much more plastic than we've ever had before.
hmm
And plastic is now in everything.
Right.
And
Everywhere.
yeah, what they say, we're eating plastic on a regular daily basis
Yeah.
that we're digesting, that in a lifetime we'll have enough plastic, like if we ate a whole credit card.
Oh, it's crazy.
That's, it is crazy. But yeah, and that's other stuff that you wind up learning. Just think, over a lifetime, you're learning is like a plastic credit card.
I think that's kind of how I see polymaths in general. Is that yes, you want to be focused on one thing, but I'm thinking that over time that one thing evolves. So if you're focused on balloons now, but then you really want to go into more firework 10 years from now and try to master that, and just over your lifetime, you become a master in these different areas, and that's kind of the true definition of polymath. I think a lot of people get confused because they think, oh, I'm going to do a whole bunch right now and try to spread my like effort too thin, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it really boils down to when you talk about polymath is it is not a instant learn.
Yeah.
When you come out of college, you think you've acquired everything. You're come out of college, you're on the honor roll, you're the top of your class, you know everything because you've read every book. But once you get into that job, somebody throws you a curve and you're like, never heard of that. And there's three other people going, well, that's the way we used to do it prior to today.
Right. And there's,
And that's where people get thrown off.
well, I think that's the dissonance between learning and mastery too, because in order to master a skill, you should be able to translate it, kind of like what you're talking about earlier with your DJ friend. He was able to translate that same skill into that digital platform, whereas a lot of people who might have been able in that field wouldn't be able to transfer it because they didn't have the actual mastery over the cutting of the music. They don't have the skill that can translate over. They just knew how to do it physically, and that was it.
Well, see, that's the other problem I see nowadays with YouTube.
Hmm.
You have people who are learning skills that they've watched 500 videos on and they go, yeah, I know how to do it.
Hmm.
That's true. You do know how to do it, but you only know how to do that one function.
Yeah.
And the problem is there are 37 other functions you need to do to be successful. If you learn how to fix dishwashers, that's great that you are the world's greatest dishwasher repairman.
Hmm.
But if somebody comes in and says, are you going to give me a bill and you don't know how to make a bill, or you don't know how to work on the computer to generate a bill, or you don't know how to manage your hours or your money, being a master of just repairing one appliance
Right.
is great, but you need to have all those other skills to make sure that your business succeeds.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're just a repair guy who's qualified for one thing and is sitting in his house not making money.
So that hyper specialist mentality is too much, but that's why I think it's kind of a mixture between the width, not width and depth, so to speak, like you're saying.
Yeah, it is. And we have to actually go back to the 1980s when Microsoft came out.
Mhm.
Microsoft decided that multitasking was the way to work. Everybody had to be able to do 7 things at once. And Windows is a perfect example. How many tabs do you have open in your window? You may have 6 tabs open.
I'll have more than that.
Right, but when it comes out of reality, you really still have to focus on that one tab, on that one page, on that one word to understand what the heck's going on.
True.
So even though you got the music going on in the background, you have the video going on over here, and if you're reading, you really just have shut the other two off and you're still focusing on that one topic.
Yeah, I remember a lot of TV shows and even just in real life too. Kids will be sitting there watching Netflix while playing a game and
Yeah.
also talking to their friends like you're talking about. And even though they're focused on the game, they're not even paying attention to the show. They're just downloading that kind of subconsciously, almost in a way. But
And yeah, and that's I do some public speaking, and when I talk about the active listening,
yeah,
that's the ability to actually take that cell phone, put it down, and actually listen to the person across from you.
hmm,
To put your head up from typing that email and look across at that person and actually talk to them.
right.
I tell a story where I used to have a boss, and it was really interesting because I'd walk into his office and it'd be one of these things that you walk into his office and I'd get there and it was always bum, bum, which meant
Wait.
quiet, sit down. And it was like, okay. And so I'd get there and I'd boom, boom. And then eventually he would turn, lower his glasses and go, what can I do for you? And I learned after a while that he always stopped, gave me 100% of his attention,
Hmm.
answered my question. Okay, good. Get out of here. And he'd go right back to work. And it became a joke because all of a sudden he would do this and this. And one day when I came in, I knew I was going to get the stop, sit down.
Hmm.
So I brought in a yo yo. I knew I always waited 2 or 3 minutes. So I got the hand signal, sit down, I went, no. And I started playing with a yo-yo. And he lowered his glasses and he looked at me and went, seriously? Well, I'm just killing time waiting for you. He's like, all right, puts his glasses back on. So I would do this on a regular basis. And
Right.
all of a sudden one day he comes into my office and I'm like, and he looked at me and went, oh, okay. He knew exactly what. I was busy working, stopped for a second. My yo-yo is in my drawer of my desk. And he would pull out the yo-yo and he'd sit there and he would play with it. He'd go, how did you do that? Dude, I'm working at the moment. Hang on. And then, as soon as I got done, I'd look at him and go, okay, what do you need? He goes, well, I need you to do this report, blah, blah, blah. But I also need you to show me how to do that yo-yo trick.
Mhm.
But it was something that we learned that when I stopped and I actively listened to what he was saying, there was no miscommunication.
Right.
And my wife's heard me tell that story numerous times because I practice it for speeches.
Mhm.
And I started to notice that instead of her coming to my office door and say, hey, I'm going grocery shopping, watch the kids, I'm going to pick up this, pick up that, and then walk away. And I'd turn up and I'd go,
What?
oh, okay, yes, okay. Kids would walk in 3 minutes later and go, where's mom? I don't know. I think she's downstairs. She's got to be somewhere. Maybe she's outside. I have no idea.
Right.
Wait, I know she said something. She's got to be around here. Let me call her. And then I started realizing something that after she started listening and paying attention to the speeches that I was practicing, she would come into my office and see me working, and she'd sit in her chair. I'd look at her and go, what do you want? She's like, no, finish what you're doing. I got a couple questions. I'd finish up. I'd turn to her and I go, what do you need? She's like, oh, I'm going to the store. Do you need anything? No. Okay. The kids are sitting downstairs playing on the video games. Make sure that they do their homework and, get fed by such and such time for lunch.
Right.
I'm going.
And then the
Now when the
communication is
kids,
much clearer.
yes, because the communication became so much clearer. She learned that when we stopped and actually communicated, the
Mhm.
message got received. There was no miscommunication. So this active listening is probably one of the greatest skills you could pick up, not only as an interviewer, a speaker, as a human being, just in learning, is to actually stop, shut down all that other noise, and actually listen to what's actually coming into your brain,
Right.
and then process that, and then answer.
What's interesting is that I've actually been trying to do that this whole conversation itself too. I'm curious about what you have to say, and I really want you to feel comfortable talking. And I also wanted to have that nice, great discussion. So I've been trying to be very direct and just listen closely and see how your brain works and that kind of thing.
And it's tough. It's tiring. It is what they call in Toastmasters active listening is an ABE, always be evaluating.
Mhm.
And that is where you actually sit there quietly and listen to what they're saying, how they're saying, what inflections they're doing. Are their hand movements proper for what they're talking about?
Mhm.
And these speeches are only 6 to 7 minutes. But when you get done, you're like, wow,
Yeah.
my mind is overloaded because I am actively listening, taking in the actual hand movements, taking in, absorbing what the speaker is saying and how they're saying, or things that they may not only mispronounce, but things that they may add in that just make the story a little strange and
Right.
confusing.
Kind of.
And that is part of active listening, and it is a hard skill to do
Right.
because it's your body is constantly working trying to remember something.
True. Well,
But
and
that also is what makes a good learner too.
yeah. Well, and when you were saying the speaking aspect behind it, it made me think about how the Dalai Lama, for example, how he speaks with people and how he just sits there, takes it all in. And there's I don't remember the exact koan or something like that, but there's a Zen Buddhist kind of mentality behind listening and taking in people's opinions and that compassion. And then there's also Paul Ekman, who is one of the master, like not master, but renowned scientists for microexpressions and understanding people and how why they do things and how you
Yeah.
can see it. And they actually wrote a book together of their conversations. And it's interesting how both the science and philosophy behind it from thousands of years ago and modern times really mesh together, and how that deep listening's been around for a long time, but not
Right.
everyone knows how to do it.
Well, I had a lot of friends when Trump was running to become president,
Hmm.
analyzing the way he worked the crowd and how he talked to them.
Hmm.
And that was things that they were noticing, that different crowds, different politicians talk different to the crowds.
Hmm.
And you could distinguish certain phrases and certain sayings that they say that rate high with the public.
Hmm.
And it is a learning curve that you pick up and you realize this, you're not talking about a point, but it's the way how the point is said
How conveyed.
and in the manner that's said.
Yeah.
Bob Dole, when he was running for president, he had a problem with his hand, and he would always, it was a clenched fist, and he would always, "I'm Bob Dole," blah blah, and I always remember that because he talked about himself in the third thing. "I'm Bob Dole." Yeah, we know you're Bob Dole. He never did anything, but Bob Dole is going to do this.
Yeah.
And he realized that having a clenched hand like this always looked like he was mad. So he always had a pen in his hand then. Then it looked like he had a pen, and then he'd be able to look like he was writing something, and he always went back this way. And it just looked like he was clutching a pen
Yeah.
instead of clutching his hand. And they found out that when you're clutching the pen, it doesn't look as intimidating than it does shaking a fist at somebody all the time.
Closed off, so to speak.
Right. And it's just like Barack Obama was another one who never pointed to anything.
Hmm.
Trump, I think Trump's a pointer.
Yeah.
Obama was a open hand. This is the way it's going to be. We're going over in this. Everything was with hands open.
Yeah.
And again, different communication technique that worked for him was the open hand.
I have to steal that. I like that.
Yeah, those are the little things that are hard to. I mean, in Toastmasters, you'll see me doing the finger count 1, 2, 3, 4. It's better to show your fingers this way than it is to count down, looking down at your fingers and slapping your fingers, because in reality, you want to know the person that this is point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4.
Hmm.
And that's why you use the fingers. But those are the way that, if you're talking about somebody that, these are the 3 points I want to talk about, the first one, second one, and third one, it's giving that visual clue. So, and this also goes back to when I taught college.
Hmm.
Do you say, "I'll talk to you later, I'll see you later, I'll be in touch with you"? What is your um, acronym or your phraseology for when you're talking to people on the phone?
Me, or just
Yeah,
in general?
you.
I think usually I say "see you later" or yeah, something along those lines,
Okay.
or "see you at this time" or something like that.
Okay. Think of your your sensories.
Mhm.
If I say, "I'll see you later," that tells me that you're probably a stronger visual learner.
Mhm.
You like to see it done
Yeah.
versus reading about it. If I say, "I talk to you later," there's a greater chance that you follow instructions verbally versus seeing it. "I'll be in touch with you" means that it's more of a tactile learning person. And depending on what your sensory technique is for learning, it'll come out as you talk to people.
Mhm.
And if you're an educator and you tell people, "Oh, I'll see you later," it's a good chance that they're a visual learner, that your your instruction should be more visual with pictures and diagrams than actually having a bunch of words up there.
Mhm.
And I've learned this with magicians. Magicians are a very unusual breed due to the fact that prior to all this video that we have nowadays, all their tricks of manipulating cards and coins and ropes were all written in books.
Yeah.
So you really had to read a book to understand what the book was talking about. And they never talked about redoing the trick all over. They just mentioned, and that's why magicians usually know the tricks by name, due to the fact that the book will say, to do this trick, you need to know this trick, and that trick,
Mhm.
and then we're going to proceed from there.
Well, and you had
And
to
they just label the names.
it makes me think about how some students may not be able to learn it so well too. That might be one of the reasons why a lot of students kind of fall back because if they're not that type of learner, especially in relation to how the teacher is teaching. If the teacher is more of a tactile, but the student's not, it may not translate very well.
Oh yeah, and that's the biggest problem you see trying to teach a child or trying to teach even another adult
Hmm.
is you have to understand their learning curve. Once you understand the way they learn, they like to learn, it becomes easy. That's why I think there's going to be a whole problem here now with this e-learning is because we are not having real examples.
Hmm.
We are not having a teacher work through a problem. I had a college instructor who a calculus teacher who he loved putting problems up on the board and go, all right, go ahead, solve it. And you'd start pulling out the paper. He goes, the answer is blah, blah. And he'd just smile. He'd write another one up on the board. He goes, go. The answer is blah, blah.
Right.
And people were like, dude, you're either really good in math or you know the answers. And he goes, I know the answers. It's the same problem I have been doing for 20 years now. I know the answers.
Hmm.
And his theory was that he grew up on a farm and learning process is simple. It's kind of like delicing sheep. When you have a sheep, you actually have to take the sheep,
Hmm.
dunk it into a bath, and you let it go on its merry way. That first dunking is just getting the sheep more used to being dunked than really killing the lice
Yeah.
or the fleas. That second time you take it and you dunk it, it's finally starting to kill more of the bugs. The third time you dunk it, it's basically now a preventative measure. You've killed off all the lice, you've killed off all the fleas. The fourth time you dunk it, you're just dunking it for the fun of it because, they're already done.
Right.
His concept was this is your first dunk into calculus. That problem on the board should scare you slightly.
Hmm.
But the second time I put it up there, you should be almost used to it. The third time I put it up there, you're going to have a good idea of what to do. You're probably going to get 75% of it through in your head and be able to give me the answer. And, the fourth time I put up that problem, guess what? You're going to look at it and go, I know the answer. I'm not even going to show you my work.
Yeah.
And it's that learning process of being dunked into a topic. The more times you're dunked into the topic, the more it sticks and the greater it becomes. That's why in school, everything seems to be a building block. And the problem is, if you miss one of those segments of the major building blocks,
Oh yeah.
it just goes downhill.
I know that in my own schooling, I missed a lot of building blocks, and they don't ever go back really to the old concepts either. Kind of go back over that act of repetition, like you're saying, dunking the sheep over and over again, getting every step of the way a little bit more cleaner, a little more cleaner, or for fun, and getting that repetition to really kind of dig it in there.
Yeah, and what's harder now, especially in Illinois, is we have what's called the Common Core learning.
We have it here too.
And the Common Core basically says, we're going to show you, in many cases, 5 ways of doing things.
Hmm.
And we're now going to grade you on those 5 things. And if we're on stage 3, forget about the 1 and 2 that got you to the answer. We're going to show you 3, and that's what you need to know because then we're going to 4 and 5.
Hmm.
When I was a child, they go, here's one way of showing it. How many people got it? Wow, 75% of you got it. Okay, great. We're going to do it again. 75% of you still got it. Great. That's the way you need to know how to do it.
Yeah.
Let's take that other 25%. I'm going to show you a second way now. And the concept was to show people multiple ways to get to the answer, but there was no real right path to get there. The goal was just to come up with the answer.
Hmm.
And what happened was you had kids who knew one pattern and they worked on that pattern over and over and became very efficient with it. The child who had a hard time with that pattern learned a different way of doing it. And then the teacher reinforced that learning process. And there was more work on the teacher's process
Right.
of making sure she was reinforcing or he was reinforcing that skill
Hmm.
than it was the child trying to learn 5 different skill levels. And even though you're now if you want to say you're a polymath where you know 5 different ways of doing it, the problem is if you fail at most of them,
Yeah.
knowing them is not always beneficial.
Yeah. It's more about getting at mastery. And that's where I think that again that the dissonance between people's understanding of the polymath, where people think that it's about getting the 5 ways of doing it. I just think it's 5 different things. You know what I mean? 5 different skills, so to
Yeah,
speak.
it is 5 different skills. Yeah, because it really you're talking about 5 different techniques to do that.
Hmm.
And you could be an expert in each one of those and have 5 experts who can come up and show you, here's how to do the math problem. But here is one expert who could only do it this way. Here's one expert who could only do it this way. Here's one expert that could do it that way.
Right.
So yeah, it's great to know all 5, but now when you're talking about overall learning, it's
Hmm.
nice to know that you have 5 options.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of us entertainers are right now are scrambling, going, all right, man, I got to look around my office to figure out what are my options. Do I have a webcam? Can I use my cell phone? Can I use my DSLR? What can I use to do my streaming?
Real quick, what kind of DSLR do you have?
I don't have one.
Oh, you don't have one yet.
That's my problem.
Yeah. I
Uh,
heard Canon has now allowed for USB input to be a webcam. So there's certain cameras that allow you to actually use your DSLR Canon camera, full on lens camera as a webcam, which is pretty
right. The Rebel, one of the newer Rebels allows to do that. Here's the 3 things I've learned about this. You get the webcam or you get the DSL.
Mhm.
You get the camera, it all looks great. Now, the camera manufacturers have done something to make sure a camera does not compete against their camcorder line or their videotaping line. So what they've done is most cameras will shut off after 20 minutes.
Oh yeah.
That's why a lot of your YouTube videos are 20 minutes or less, because
You
that's all
can.
they could do before it shuts off.
Yeah.
The camcorder goes now for hours and hours and hours, but again, it's a different price bracket. It's got different lens quality. You can't take out the lens. So there's a whole different video. One is really for video production, which is guaranteed this size. And the only way you zoom in is walk closer or pull farther away.
Right.
With a camera, you could adjust. So that's one problem. So you got this 20-minute time constraint.
Uh-huh.
2 is a lot of these take batteries.
Yeah.
So now you need to get a camera that will connect with a power supply that doesn't overheat,
Oh yeah, definitely.
because they get warm. They're like the old laptops that used to get real hot on your laps.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So now you have not only a camera that is a 20-minute time frame, you also have to make it electrical. Here comes the third part now.
H-
Unlike your webcam that just plugs in and it's ready to go, your camera needs to go to a video caption device.
Yeah. The
That
HDMI.
caption device now goes to your computer.
Hmm.
The caption device costs a fraction compared to what the webcam. So now you got to buy a decent webcam for, probably 1,000 starting, if not more. You got the caption device, which is going to be about $700. You got
Some
your
of them are
cabling
pretty
that
cheap
goes
though.
in between to your computer.
Right.
And your computer better be at least $600 to $800, the low end of a new computer bought in the last 2 years.
Right.
That could now get you that video.
Right. And it's just such a tedious process. That's why a lot of people have had a hard time with the live streaming, like you're saying. And I know there's different alternatives like the Elgato um, Stream Deck, and not Stream Deck, but the streaming software where we can send it through the HDMI
Yeah.
output. But that's what I was saying. The new Canon DSLR cameras can now connect through USB and act like a webcam without all that setup.
Oh, okay.
It's
I haven't seen that yet.
yeah, that was just this week that it came out,
Oh, okay.
and it's a beta.
That's going to be their $2,000 camera.
Yeah, still like a super expensive camera, but it's still like if you have that camera now, you don't have to get that HDMI stripper, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I've even gone online looking in the marketplace and like Google and stuff like that, and just see who's trying to upgrade and get rid of old equipment.
Right.
Old equipment I mean, I watched one YouTuber. He had 8 cameras
Yeah.
in his studio. Plus, he had a moving one and one that could be controlled. I'm like,
Harris Heller, perhaps?
may have been.
Because that sounds exactly like his setup that I recall.
Yeah, he does software review, hardware review.
Hmm.
If that's him, yeah.
There's also Epox Box, I believe it's called. He's
Okay.
very good too. They're very helpful considering you're learning the exact same thing I am. I figure we might as well share that knowledge. But
Yeah,
uh,
it's knowledge that I've had for a while, but again, it keeps changing.
right, yeah,
Because when I bought this, I bought my new camera, which is already 5 years old, my Logitech C920
hmm,
camera. I had it on a different computer. And the problem was I was having problems with doing video, that I wanted higher end video. So I got a higher end camera. Not realizing that higher end video puts more processor speed or processing on my computer.
yeah.
So I got a new computer. And at the time, I'd had 128 meg of RAM
Oh,
on the video card. I was like blown away. Now they want 8 gig or 12 or 16 gig of memory on the video card.
yeah, the VRAM and whatnot. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. That's
So
what I have. It was hard to get to.
yeah, and that's, when I look at it, it's like for me to want the camera, I need to start backwards. I got to start with the PC, upgrade the PC. Once I get the PC strong enough, then you get the equipment to go with it. And it's just a cycle
Yeah,
that once you get everything in place, then the new software comes out and you go, wow, that's cool. Wait, I need to have a stronger PC and new camera. And it's,
well, and then there's the whole software aspect behind it too, which recording software, which video editing kind of thing. Let's go back to that learning concept though. You're talking about how the skills have been changing. Even if you know the skill itself, the field itself keeps changing. So like it almost seems like one of the biggest skills we need to learn is how to unlearn certain things.
yeah, it brings up two things. One, when I got into the computer field, when I got out of college, my father looked at me. He goes, "Geez, you made the same mistake I did. I went into engineering,
Hmm.
and he was in electrical engineering. He's like, you're going to constantly have to learn something new
Yeah.
on a week to week basis." And back in the 80s, that's the way it was. New software was coming out, new computers were coming out, faster hard drives, faster PCs. And here we are, some almost 40 years later now, it's slowed down. So
Really?
the learning curve is not that hard because, I mean, even with the cell phones, what's new is new. It's just a better image.
Yeah.
There's nothing that exciting. That's even slowed down. Um, Things have a tendency to slow down, but at some point, uh, the environment changes
Hmm.
because what you used to do, I mean, I joke about people going, well, everyone's on Zoom now. It's like, well, Big Bang has been doing video conferencing for 12 seasons.
Yeah.
And now people are like, oh, well, I could FaceTime. And well, we could have FaceTime for the last almost 10 years.
Right. Or Skype. And I think I even remember doing some video calls even in the late 2000s too. So it's just been on
Yeah,
that.
it's been there. I mean, my Skype account is probably a good 10, 12 years old.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, but again, you couldn't find anybody who had it. And if
Man.
they had it, nobody would turn on their camera because it's like, I don't have a camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, I mean, so we go through these, I don't want to call them cycles in learning, that everything has a point where we get to know it. And then once we
Mhm.
get to that point, it's, I look at it and go, there's a generation now, and probably 10 years, will never know how to park a car.
Right.
There'll be no need for it. The car will self-park.
Right.
We'll be past my generation, probably won't be driving that much, and at that point we'll go, yeah, it's a lot easier to hit a button than trying to remember how to park in, or I need to put glasses on. I don't even need to wear my glasses. The car will self park. It'll pull into the driveway. It'll park itself in the garage. I
Yeah.
don't even need to see. Just fall
The
asleep and hit a
45-degree
button.
angle and whatnot to get to the parallel park.
Yeah. So from there, I mean, the skill to learning to drive is going to change,
Yeah.
but here's something, I've been driving almost 40 years already. And I went to get into a new car that my cousin had rented.
Mm.
And he's in one car, and we're taking this car back to the car rental place. And we stopped off at a place and get back into the car. And I called him on the phone. Went, Carl, how do you start this stupid car? Man, I've been pushing the button. How do you start it? He's like, where's the key fob?
Uh,
It's got, you got to have the key fob out of your pocket and close enough for the ignition to start.
uh,
Really? I had no idea. I just, I got in it earlier and hit a button. And he goes, yeah, you had the key fob probably sitting in the ashtray. That's where I had it before.
I was looking at cars last year, and at one point, this car wasn't even that new. It was a half a decade old, but it was a pretty fancy one, so it was ahead of its time. And essentially, the key fob had to go inside the ignition key space, so there was no actual key to put in there. You put it in there, which I hadn't seen before. So me and my uncle, who were trying to look at this car, trying to figure out how to start this car, we tried looking at the buttons, we tried pressing the outside, and nothing was doing it. So we get the dealer, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you have to push it in there and then turn it." I get an actual key, but it was just a fob itself. So that's really weird too.
Yeah, and here's something that you grew up with was a car.
Yeah.
But you can't start the car now because the technology has changed.
Hmm.
So there is that cycle that, for everything is going to be relearned. My father always used to say, keep a tie long enough and it'll come back into fad.
Yeah.
And right now, nobody's wearing ties. Give it another 10 years. People are going to say ties are the coolest thing.
Yeah. I've always loved ties personally.
They're cool. I always like a good tie.
And like we were saying, the kind of phases of knowledge and how if you're trying to become a master in some area, you can never 100% really understand it because, like you said, the times keep changing and that kind of thing. I actually was thinking about a concept called omnimath, where the master of everything, but you literally couldn't do that even in multiple human lifetimes. But it's just a nice, almost like a koan in a way, just getting your brain thinking about that.
Yeah, which brings you into a situation. Can you have a computer that's all knowing?
Hmm.
Because at some point, it's like infinity plus one. There's always going to be something else that, even if it was the smartest computer in the world that was able to keep generating and learning,
Hmm.
it would get to a point where it would discover something new after it completely finished everything, because it would get to the point and go, I know everything.
Hmm.
And then have this kind of thought process and go, wait a minute, what happens if I would have done this?
Yeah. Whole another
And
path.
it just creates a whole new outcome.
Yeah. Don't get me on
Have
the
you ever
multiverse
seen,
theory. I'll start getting existential terror.
there was a show, used to be a PBS series. I can't think of the guy who used to do it. He'd
Hmm.
talk about a weapon. He's like, all right, in 1942, the Germans came out with a 50 millimeter barrel. And he'd talk about this. And he
Hmm.
goes, but before we could start that, we have to talk about where gunpowder actually came from. So back in, 1432, we learned about, gunpowder, but actually, we had to learn about this. And he'd even go farther back in time about the grinding process. And you would have to step, and you would see that for them to actually design that gun, there had to be 20 to 30 inventions to make that final product actually
Right.
appear, due to the fact that the metal, they didn't know how to make strong enough metal that would have exploded right there. They didn't know about the casing. They didn't know about the aiming policy. And there were so many things that had to come into play before they could actually make that cannon that, somebody's just putting a bullet in and shooting.
Yeah. Well, and it's all of the things that came before, like the pencil itself, for example,
Yeah.
the actual little metal piece around the edge of it, the eraser, the lead inside of it, the wood it came from, and how a pencil is made takes countless different people to actually be able to make.
Yeah, and just think, there's some guy who, I don't even have, I got a pencil here. Yeah, I got a pencil here, who was so excited until, do I have, yeah, he was so excited. Went, look, I have a pencil, till the mechanical pencil came along.
Yeah.
And it went, look, we got the lead. You don't even have to sharpen it. And I'm like, whoa. I mean, it's just craziness that, when you start thinking about it, it's never ending.
And that kind of goes in the whole cycle about how just education right now, not only because of the pandemic and people are on Zoom pretty much the whole time now, but just in general, how the system wasn't really ready for that. And I was talking to a TA friend of mine, how his professors is not wanting to learn how to use these new technologies, just straight
Yeah.
up saying no to it, and much to probably the detriment to their students too.
Yeah, there is. I, this brings up something I was going to mention earlier. There
Mhm.
is, when you're in management, there's two ways to train people. Either you hire people who have the skill, or you bring people in who can learn the skill.
Mhm.
Now, if you're bringing the person who has the skill, it's no big deal.
Right.
Costs a lot more money, harder to do. If you bring somebody in who you want to train them to do the skill, you take somebody who has just completed the training and make them the new trainer.
Mhm.
You never take that old timer to teach somebody something new, because the old timer goes, we don't, in the old days, we never did that. This is how we do it. And you're like, well,
Not
did they
anymore.
find out that that causes cancer? Yeah, but I've never had it and I've been doing it for 50 years.
Right.
And that's why companies come in and they look at certain marketing teams or certain management teams and go, it's easier just to fire everybody and
Mm.
bring in a whole new crew, because it's easier to train the people to do the new stuff,
Yeah.
not the old stuff.
Yeah.
Or, like I learned in college, if you teach somebody something wrong in the beginning when you're teaching them, it's almost impossible for them to forget about that. They always go back to that mistake and go, well, you told me. No, I told you wrong.
Yeah.
Learning something wrong sticks in your mind faster than learning it the right way.
Well, and like I said, the skill of unlearning earlier too, just being able to detach yourself from that first idea that you have taken of that particular skill or knowledge, being able to unlearn it so that you can learn something new that's better and
Yeah.
more efficient.
And that's the hard part, because there's ego involved, that I'm superior, I know how to do it. Don't want to be shown by somebody who's less experienced than me.
Hmm.
There's a lot of little mind games that go in, just our own mind saying what we can and cannot do.
Right.
And that's a whole nother trip, because, when you get into what your mind says you can't do, your mind tells you that, I can't listen to myself on video because I sound terrible.
Oh
So I'm
yeah, that's
never
a
going to
whole
do it.
hurdle to get past.
Oh yeah, and that's, I mean, I play around here with my light every now and then. It's like, I don't like the way I look or the way it
Or even
reflects.
the light here and whatnot. It's like,
Yeah, and it's that self mind correcting and go, well, I don't look like Brad Pitt. Why, oh, that's right. They have filters. They do a lot of
mhm,
editing. They work on the audio so it's crisp and clear. They add in sound effects.
right.
We're doing this live like everybody else is in the world. So
Mhm,
there's a lot of imperfection that we have to overcome
right.
just to get to this point of actually doing this conversation.
Well, and I mean, too, the whole prospect of us meeting right now too probably wouldn't have happened 10 to 20 years ago, maybe in this way. And now we have this conversation, we can actually merge the ideas and listen to each other and that kind of thing. And we're talking about how Zoom and different recording programs, and you're talking about too, focus. I have a recording program here, a notepad, window open for earlier, and then the Zoom. Just, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it just, I mean, it just boggles the mind that this is where we're at. This
Mhm.
pandemic that we're in now is going to make this much more common.
Yeah.
Think about it this way: my son is starting next week, I think, doing Zoom. His school's a little behind the times, doing Zoom school sessions.
Mhm.
There is going to come a day where a snow day in Chicago means you pull up your tablet and you just go to school.
Right. That'd be interesting too, though. Like I missed a lot of school days when I was younger because of snow days. What if we could just do Zoom instead back then? And
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
think of it. I grew up in a classroom that their big overhead projector was a light box that shone, overhead. You put it on, it flashed it up, and that was it.
hmm,
These kids now, I call them kids because that's really what they are, is actually seeing a live video presentation off of YouTube that's
Mhm.
being streamed right to their own movie theater
Right.
that the teacher could freeze, draw on, write on. I mean, the technology for them to teach is so great that with these Zoom, I mean, I've seen it on TikTok where kids are screwing around where they got 20 kids going, "Hey, can I borrow a pen?" And
Yeah,
somebody,
just
from Six Things is shipping a pen around.
we should follow each other on TikTok, by the way.
Yeah, and it's funny to see the craziness that people do
Mhm.
with the videos and its creativity. And you sit there and go, man, I would have never thought of that.
Yeah.
Even Saturday Night Live doesn't even come up with that because what they come up with going, oh yeah, I forgot that my video camera's on. I'm going to the bed. I mean,
Yeah. To my
that's 20 years ago
Yeah.
comedy.
Yeah. Well, and it's I was actually listening to someone, Gary Vee, actually talk about this about Vine. Vine was basically the TikTok of 2006, 7-ish time span, and there was a lot of creators on there who got their fame from that app. And even though that app didn't necessarily produce much for them and it closed down, the skills they learned from that was repeated when Instagram and TikTok has come out, and now they've only gotten better from that third
Right.
iteration of practice.
Well, Gary Vee is one reason why I'm on TikTok.
Hmm.
Um,
Same.
that and I just wanted to screw with my kids and get more followers and more shows than they did in the first couple videos than they did for a whole couple months.
There you go.
But
Parenting right there.
yeah, it's 101 what we do. But no, it's interesting because it- what we learned and what platform is what we do now. And I have a lot of my entertainment friends who are sitting there scratching their head going, man, this is so cool. I'm going to have some cameras here. I'm going to do cameras here. This is going to be awesome. But, how do we go about doing this? And I'm sitting there shaking my head going, dude, flip on a YouTuber. You'll see a
Yeah.
13-year-old kid with a million followers who's got 27 camera rigs, who's got the equipment. What you're doing is barely catching up to what he's offering for free to his viewers.
Well, and on top of that too, you don't always need fancy equipment. You could do a lot of it with just your phone if you know how to do it well enough. Get some good lighting, sit in front of a window, use your phone. I saw one YouTuber stack books and place her phone against the books in order to have a propped up tripod essentially in
Right.
that way. And it's just if you're creative enough with it and you understand the skills behind it, why we have lighting, why we have a good speaking voice going from the gut to project, if you understand those, then you can understand the basic concept of that presentation. You know this well enough, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying it's interesting
No,
how.
I hear you. I actually did a video on 3 things that you can do to improve your webcast, and it came from I was on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and I'm watching the salesman talk about how he wants to help other companies, even though you may not use my service. If you need something, just call me. And it's a technique of just helping other people.
Right.
It's networking. And I watched his video, and he's got his monitor, and the monitor is set low, so he's kind of looking this way, and then he's got to look down. And there's really 3 things that you need to do. One is know where the camera is,
Yeah.
so you can look at the camera. 2, if you're doing it on a laptop, I usually tell people cover your image up because you notice I'm doing really good. Not I have my picture there, and I also have my picture there. I have 2 spots that I could look at myself in
Yeah.
full size, and if I kind of split my eyes, I could see both myself. You want to cover up your picture because if you don't, you get distracted to watch yourself.
Right.
So you
Uh,
should you look at the camera, you look at the picture, and lastly, you raise the camera up to height level.
yeah.
And when you do that, you stop the double chin, you
Mhm.
stop this of looking up your nose, you're now looking at eye level. And that is the simplest 3 things you could do, and your video quality improves before you even get to lighting or sound or anything else. It's just 3 little basic things.
Yeah. Mine was a little too high there, I guess. But yeah, and I.
Yeah, I mean, I could still drop mine down lower. I mean, it's like I say, I try to adjust it. So, and think about it when you're watching guys videotape stuff, it's all shoulder level coming
Mhm.
at eye level. Nobody shoots from their belly
Yeah.
unless they're trying to get an upward scene.
Yeah, and it's more of artistic expression in that regard. But like you were saying too, I have our Zoom call over here, so I can look at you without being distracted on the screen in front of me.
Right. And like I say, as soon as I talk, I have my main screen here, and then I have you myself pop up. So I'm
Mhm.
got to stay tunnel vision.
Yeah, straight and fun. Well, and there was something I was going to talk to you about. So one thing that I guess I was just going to explain is that for PolyInnovator, what we're recording for right now, I talked about self-education quite a bit and tried to see how we can get ourselves teaching ourselves right now during the quarantine. But even before the pandemic, I was talking about how modular education, how we can start really kind of free-forming the education process on our own, let alone having a college doing it, something like that.
Mhm.
And it's interesting how we can directly input what we choose to learn. We don't have to be told you have to take this class, you have to take this class. And so if a particular skill is not really of interest of you, you can skip it for now or skip it for good and move on to something else. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting you say that because I went to college for computers, and
Hmm.
I had one friend who was very heavily into, I got to learn it now.
Yeah.
This is the new database program. I'm going to learn it backwards and forwards. And I was always the type go, why?
Hmm.
I know about it, but I'm not doing anything with it.
Hmm.
I know what its purpose is. I know the basic uses of it, but I'm going to learn something else that I need to use right now. This word processor of Microsoft Word, I need to learn how to use that.
Right.
And you learn to justify the skills that you need to learn to get the final project done. For me to do this virtual show,
Hmm.
I had to first figure out lighting. And I don't have all my lights on here. I'm still short, 3 lights.
Hmm.
And I got one light here that's adjusting around, that's screwing around with me. And I'll turn this on to get the camera from
Get that.
going crazy.
Yeah.
But I had to learn about that. Then I had to learn about how to tweak the mic to sound better. Then I had to learn about how am I getting it out there, or am I video editing? Then I had to learn about the editing software. And then I had to learn about, how to put the overlays on. And I'm
Oh,
learning all this.
yeah.
And you get to a point you go, what show am I doing? Especially in this environment, there are so many entertainers right now that are freaking out
Hmm.
because they have to learn all the technical stuff. And now you have to take a show where you used to, you tell the kid, hey, throw me the ball. And you'd start juggling. You can't do that anymore.
Hmm.
You can't literally do any of your side by side routines where you need a volunteer.
Right.
That 30-second where I'm going to kill time and make fun of the volunteer is no longer there.
Yeah. So you have new
I
things to think about.
Yeah, I can't wait for a laugh to happen. I have to throw it out there and okay, we're moving on now.
What if you copy that TikTok that we talked about earlier with the pencil moving between screens where you can pretend that someone's throwing you a ball?
Yeah, you could do that, but we're self-quarantined. So I'm
Yeah.
lucky I got 4 people in the house, but there
Mhm.
are some entertainers who, are just home alone.
Yeah.
Going, hang on, I got this camera, I just got this. I can't do 22 things.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of routines. I had one friend says, yeah, I'm balancing stuff, on the crotch of my leg to put that there so it looks like it's floating there while I could do that. And then I grab that. So to design a show, we spend probably anywhere from 6 months to a year developing the show, working out the bugs. And then the next year, we're actually improving the props. We're improving the things that work and don't work. And then 3 years into it, you have a show that just kind of works like clockwork.
Yeah.
It's easy to sell. You get the marketing materials, you have the pictures. Here, you're like, hmm.
So it almost seems like that technological barrier of a way, even though we have all this new technology that can help make it easier, that change of being not no longer in person has made a big difference.
Oh yeah, there's two things. One, it throws off timing.
Oh yeah.
Two is we're human. We like interaction.
Yeah.
That's why Zoom is going over so big. Finally, people realize I could see somebody and talk to the face.
Like you.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, and it's funny because we don't really know each other.
Hmm.
besides the little conversation we've had back and forth. But it's not unnatural to see somebody at a party or at a meeting and just have a face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, and get to know each other in that way too.
Yeah, that's typical. That's the way we interact. And with the computer and the technology of everybody just always wanting to type in a text message, you lose that interpersonal communication.
Exactly. Especially over the phone, I feel like with chat programs, even if you're using voice, you can hear the inflections in the voice, but I really like seeing people's face. Like right now, I want to make sure that our eye contact is strong, the video is great. So I'm looking at the camera, but I want to look over at the screen, look at your face. Just because that's kind of just,
You're doing what I want to do. You,
yeah.
you sit there and want to watch yourself.
Yeah. Well, it's just having that face-to-face interaction like you're saying. I can't wait till we have like holograms where they can record me through the hologram and not have to worry about screens and cameras, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it'd be nice if a lot of it again is just having a tool that, if you could have the hologram appear right here where the camera is, the camera would actually project the hologram and you would just talk to that and you didn't have to worry about how it was being transmitted.
Yeah,
Because right now, a lot of us are more concerned about how it's being transmitted than really worrying about what we're looking at.
right.
More concerned to say, oh, is it going right? Am I getting a like? Am I getting this? Am I supposed to be reading a message over there?
Hmm.
Instead of it goes back to that active listening, which is active talking, where you got to stay focused on that one horse blinders technique again.
Yeah. I took a clear communication class in the small time I was in college, and one of the things that we were talking about is active listening. And there was one little tip that I've used quite a bit is covering the mouth to prevent yourself from trying to speak out or interrupt or something like that. Especially if
It's,
you're getting excited about a conversation or something like that.
it's a
Kind of
good
like a
tip. I, I like that. Because that's one problem is our minds want they always talk about active listening is you're not actually listening to the conversation, you're
hmm.
more about talking about what you want to say.
Yeah, you're thinking about what you're going to say next instead of
Yeah,
listening what they're actually saying.
right. And they always say the best conversation is when you say the least,
Hmm. As a
except
talker,
when
oh, sorry.
right, except when you're doing interviewing, you don't want that host to go
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, because then you're like, okay, let me ask you another question,
Right.
and that
More
becomes difficult.
exactly. And you were saying that as a performer, you have that issue of you want that live kind of interaction. Myself, for example, I do instruction for exercise. I teach water aerobics, swim lessons, and personal training, and having that interpersonal connection, like you were saying earlier, is very important. And it's almost theatrical in a way. You almost have to be a performer in order to really get their attention and engage them. And so now that we're in quarantine, it almost feels kind of off.
Yeah, well, here I just had a friend. I did another interview with a friend who was trying to do interviewing, and he did his first one, and he was in about this close. So he was more concerned about making sure he got his face there, and I was sitting farther back like this. And when I watched the video, I was able to talk with my hands, and I realized that when we start to actually do this with the Zoom, there is a distance where you got to keep that hand movement in there because when we actually talk to an individual, we're roughly 3 feet in front of them to 5 feet,
Hmm.
and we do hand movements.
Right.
Then when you do get closer, your hand movements aren't there. Now you're relying on really their face. And if their face is just, like this, you don't see the hand. You see the little rafter hands sticking up.
I feel like you're coming after me now, considering all my hands were down here this whole conversation. Now I got to scoot back.
Well, see, I have the capability. I could actually pull my mic all the way down here if I need to, jump it on here. And, I could actually still keep talking and have a full screenshot.
Right.
But yeah, that is part of the communications because when you're talking to somebody, you realize that all of a sudden that if their communication is gone, this is what you're seeing. And then it's like, all right, that's boring. But
Weird,
when you
almost
first,
like, yeah.
yeah. So it's just, I'm not picking on you, Dustin. It's just rafter hands.
Well, and it's also a matter of like that interpersonal connection and understanding people, like we were talking about earlier, reading body language. If you can't actually see the body language, the other person can't read it. Like you're saying, like,
Yeah, and even though we're doing this to get more personal communication,
hmm
and again, this is all learned skills again. I'm sure you're looking at this going, wow, after
getting to
hands,
better,
big
getting
hands. Yeah, that looks a little better on video.
like that's one reason. It's making me think about the camera angle and making sure that we're in the frame, make sure that the hands are there, that kind of thing.
Well, you've noticed I also have a tendency to kind of do this because it goes back to video school, which I never was at, is
hmm
offset because not a lot of times you want to be exactly in the center of the screen. You can be slightly off and still give a little more dramatic. When I have entertainers, I was helping a friend out in Australia because
That's cool.
always with Zoom. She's a magician, and she's like, "Well, I have a tube that color the silks change colors, and can I go like this?" And I was talking to her, and I was like, "You can stand back here, but if you're going to stuff the tube up here, and then when you go to shoot it, she shot it, and the first thing she did was she went boom and shot right off the screen,
Oh,
came down, and went like this." I went, "Stop for a second. Instead of shooting it up, shoot it at that angle. Notice you go, poof, it goes out this way. You could still catch it, but you could actually see it come out of the tube. It doesn't have to shoot up high in the air. You have to learn how to use the angles of your camera.
yeah.
And that's where you could just, and I said, you go from here just to squat down, go boom, like that, and be able to catch it still in camera.
It's almost like that performer mentality has changed because of the technology and the screen. It's kind of interesting too because we were going to talk about more like learning and polymath, and we ended up having that really awesome discussion about performance and technology and how these cameras have changed our needs during the pandemic. It's kind of interesting how this turned out.
Well, it's a learning thing that right now up to I, go back. I almost go to March 16th.
hmm
Prior to March 16th, I was working on a book about public speaking. That was priority, was trying to finish that dumb book up
hmm
by May because May starts off my crazy entertainment season.
Right, so you can kind of mark it on that time. Yeah,
Right. So at that moment in mid-March, it just went, um, it's not important to really get this book finished. It's still important, but
priority.
maybe getting a virtual studio set up, maybe a higher priority
Yeah,
than learning more about public speaking and writing it in a book.
yeah. And it's kind of like just figuring out what your current priority is. And I think that's an issue with a lot of people lately too. I've been making some more content based around productivity. I actually stopped making what I was normally focusing on, the self-education, and focusing purely on productivity because a lot of people are sitting there not knowing what to do during this quarantine. Even the same thing they were normally doing, even if it didn't actually change very much, they always worked on the laptop. They can do that at home. But
Right.
the dynamics of working out, not working out, working at home or working out at home has changed so much, your mentality changes too. You don't want to work the same way you did at your office.
Oh
That you
yeah, that's yeah. Totally agree with that. I actually, yeah, again, I'm a polymath person. I have another website that deals with marketing. I call it success in 90
oh,
minutes.com. And the focus is really came from the P90 world because I wanted to get in shape and it was 90 minutes of exercise. Okay, I could understand that 90-minute exercise a day. And
mhm,
I did the program for a couple of years. And I realized that it puts you into a structured routine that I am going to spend X amount of time. Then I went down to the 30-minute exercise, and now it's up to, can I do 15 minutes on a regular basis?
right.
But with marketing, I looked at that and went, we shouldn't be marketing 90 minutes a day.
hmm
Why is marketing so important? Well, marketing is how we get our word out there. It's how we meet people. It's how our advertising, and there's a whole host again of ideas. But I set aside 90 minutes for marketing, which meant that I was actively marketing every single day. After 90 minutes, man, if I want to go read a book, if I want to go do a sales presentation, if I want to go work on my entertainment skills, I could do that. But I got the marketing done to make sure that people keep hiring me.
Right. Well, and there's a lot going into that. There's the deep work mentality where you're focusing on one big task for however many
Yeah.
hours or 90 minutes in this case. And there's also just the consistency habit too. A lot of people just don't know how to
Yeah.
be consistent.
Well, see, if you've probably read or Tim Ferriss, so what is it, 4 Hour Work Week?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody's read that. It's like Dale Carnegie book. Almost everybody's read that.
Hmm.
You can deconstruct your day, find out what you need to achieve, and do that. And once you've done that, anything else beyond that is really extra.
Hmm.
So if you know that I have to get up, feed the kids, get the kids dressed, get them out of the house, start my job, and this is the fastest way to do it, it achieves the greatest thing, that is the pattern you do.
Yeah.
After that, you go, geez, I got to give the kids bath. Well, after you've done all those 5 things, you've done your work, half your day's still left. You could give the kids a bath. You could go fishing. You could go do whatever you want because you've gotten the core stuff done.
Right.
It's kind of like working out.
Yeah.
Once you get those, I mean, that's my whole thing of working out. I sit there and go, what burns the most calories, building a bicep or doing squats? What I know, you use the bigger muscles, you burn more energy.
Yeah.
So best to work on the big muscles first in the workout when you're really pumped up to do it because you're going to burn the energy. Then work on the little muscles and you'll have a better workout than if you started with, the little dumbbells and then try doing the squats. And then halfway through the squats, you're like, oh, I'm burned out already.
So I actually completely agree. So I've experienced that myself, but I also kind of believe in the idea of snowballing too. So you do the small ones, then the bigger ones, then the bigger ones. You get kind of that motivation to continue. So I'm kind of curious about that duality.
Yeah, I understand that concept. I, I I have the same problem is because I go through these P90X workouts
Mhm.
and I'm gung ho, and I will be up to a 45-minute workout, no problem, dripping in sweat. I'll be doing that for 5 weeks straight.
Mhm.
And then, life hits in and I go fishing and I take a day off. And next thing I know, where I'm at right now, I was working on building a little more muscle than cardio.
Mhm.
I go to work out again, and it's like, I know I can't do a 45-minute routine.
Yeah.
I have to, again, start out with 15 minutes. The next day, I'm going to be sore. I'll take that day off, and I'll have to get back to those 15 minutes. I have to snowball it all the way back up again.
True.
And it's slightly different, I think, with weight training and muscles because your muscles are sore.
Mhm.
When it comes to learning, I never recall my brain being sore from trying to read a book.
But it's not
So
necessarily
from
soreness. It's almost that mental fog in a way.
Yeah, well, if you're reading something that's heavy or too technical that you don't understand, then yeah, you have to do that snowball effect. But if you have, again, we're talking about applied learning,
Mhm.
you didn't forget what you had.
True. Yeah.
Unlike muscle training, your legs, hey, I squatted, 350 pounds the other month. I haven't worked out in a month. That 350 is going to be almost nearly impossible.
Yeah.
And you're going to
Well,
have to build up because the entropy is already set in.
true, and that's totally correct. Here's kind of the secret though, the actual muscles themselves still remember them doing it in the past, they just can't do it just yet. 'Cause like you said, the atrophy came into effect,
Right.
you lost that strength, but, when you start exercising for the first time and over for the first few years, the nuclei start building up in the muscle cells, and so when you actually stop working out and then go back to it, it's a much quicker process to get back to it than it would be just to start from the very
See
beginning.
now, see that I didn't realize because I think my mind just keep telling me that it's like how I started before. I have
Mhm.
to start in those slow little tracks
Well,
to
it's
get
good to do
there
that
when
too.
actually I'm skipping.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you might skip it by accident, like without even realizing it, and you get that progress again. But it is also kind of important to realize the yeah, just not
Start working out again. All right.
it's also important not to burn out too. And so having that slow start is very important, just so you don't overdo it, that kind of thing. It's
Yeah, I
mentality.
think I think the most I burned out was when I was doing the P90X and then I was trying to do a what was it, insanity workout in
Oh,
the afternoon that same day. Yeah.
oh yeah, that's hard.
Then
I,
I got, was it fasciitis areatus in the foot where I couldn't walk for, a month and a half. And then I realized that, at age, what was it, 52 at the time, I wasn't trying to be a high school college kid.
mhm.
So I tell myself, I'm 55 now. I sit there and I think about it, going, 55, dude, I got to slow down a little here. I don't need to do 900 jumping jacks.
Yeah.
800 is good enough.
Right. Well, and
So,
it's one of those things too where 800 is still much more than a lot of people do. And having that self-awareness, like, hey, I don't need to do 900 for me. For me, I want to do 800, but that's still way more than most people. So you're still making that strong progress and working towards that new goal. So
yeah, it's not really 800. It just sounds really good on video. Say
yeah,
800.
well, we'll say it's
I've,
800.
I've learned when you count by tens, it's real easy.
Yeah.
You know?
I actually wanted to say something before I forget too. I guess I wasn't truly active listening at that point because I kept thinking about this, but you're talking about doing the big muscles before the smaller muscles. And there was one thing that I was learning about the lymphatic system, the trash collection system of the body so much, is that it has a lot to do with the hormones. And so when you start doing squats first, it helps get the testosterone going through your body, and which can help not only older men, women even too, but also just help your gains as well, because you start producing more before you
Mhm.
start doing the other exercises. So that's kind of a neat little life hack.
Well, it's funny because I was just talking this in an entertainment group. Entertainers, we ride depressions. We go like this. We're sky high when we're entertaining. When we're not entertaining, we kind of go down
Mm-hmm.
until we get that next booking, and then we're excited again. And then if I haven't entertained in a while, it feels like I'm not doing anything. Then you get depressed that you should be booking yourself more. And I've noticed working out is the same way.
Yeah.
That there's these peaks and valleys. On a good days you're up like this, tough days you're down like this. I remember reading in a book that talked about smiling, that if you're in a bad mood or if it's a tough day, go smile for 30
Mhm.
seconds in the mirror. Just smile. Don't say anything, just smile. It'll put you in a better mood.
Right.
Now, um, got a picture of mom and dad. They've been gone for, close to 15, 13 years.
Mhm.
And it's funny, when I work out, I got a picture of dad there and he's got this kind of smirk on his face. I just laughed to myself going, uh-huh. You're sitting there going, uh-huh, fatty. Fatty's working out. That's what you're doing. And I could hear him joking in my head,
Yeah.
which just puts me in a good mood again because I'm thinking about my parents.
Right.
And it just makes it easier to work out because now I'm in a happy mood going, man, I really hate doing squats, but dad's laughing at me. I'm going to prove him wrong. This is going to be
Right.
fun. And I smile to myself, and I find that it's not that difficult because I'm now happy.
Mhm.
And that's something I've learned and I'm applying, to something that I never thought I would apply to is working out.
Right. It's interesting too, and like taking that connotation of your father and putting it to a different skill, and just understanding how that can motivate you to do more.
Yeah. And it motivates me in a positive way too.
Yeah.
It's, he would always go, Mom, look, he's getting fat. And she come, he's only 170 pounds. He's not fat.
Mhm.
He's like, I can pinch an inch on it. Well, you pinch an inch on anybody, Dad. Okay. So it's just the things that go through your head
Mhm.
that, again, if you're a 16-year-old kid, you can't recall those experiences until you get older in life,
Right.
you know? So,
Well, and it comes down to like you were saying earlier, being able to focus on one thing. If you're not having that motivation to focus, or just having that right mindset, like you had that mindset with your father like making fun of you in your head, and that motivated you to focus on that exercise instead of mentally complaining, oh, I don't want to do this. You're focusing on a
right.
positive connotation, which puts that whole exercise in a positive connotation in your brain too.
Yeah. And like I say, positivity makes it easier.
Mhm. Where could the followers on this podcast and PolyInnovator find you?
Easiest way to find me is if you're on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
balloonsart.com.
Start.com.
Or my name, DaleObrochta. That's DALE
Mm-hmm.
OBROCHTA. You could find me. That's my Instagram name. That's my Twitter name. If you want to find me on the internet, just do Magical Balloon Dude Dale, which is actually the website of MBD, the number 2.com.
Okay, I'll make sure I'll
And
have.
if you Google my name, you're going to come up with a couple hundred websites for me.
I'll make sure I'll have a couple websites in the description
Sure,
for you too. But hey,
appreciate that.
Dale, it's been great to have you on the podcast and PolyInnovator and just talking to you about all these different concepts. I mean, it was interesting how we took that one idea of just being a polymath and was able to really kind of find all these branching topics and how we both were able to connect so quickly, so no less.
It's what educated people do.